Hello, fellow Burly summer campers. I'm your naughty professor, Eilidh here today to teach a here's one I made earlier cake board fans tutorial to show you how to make these beautiful cake board feather fans. Before I go into like what you need, materials, all the things that we did in the paper plate tutorial previously, we're going to have the ethics of feather use in burlesque conversation. And here's my stance on it. It doesn't have to be your stance. You might have different values, different vision for the world, and that's okay. I accept that. I appreciate it if you accept my point of view as well, and we can have an adult conversation about it. So, feathers are often part of the meat industry, and they're often part of fashion in ways that are not ethical, not sustainable, and frankly cruel to animals and also to people in terms of the environmental impact of dyeing them, the environmental impact of farming the birds in the first place. I am not vegan. I am not vegetarian. I'm not able to do that because I have some health issues, which means that I I tried to be vegetarian in my 20s and it made me very, very ill. So there are a lot of cultures in the world where they come from places where growing vegetation, growing vegetables, growing grains is not really possible in their climate, so they are very reliant on a meat based diet. But unlike in modern capitalist factory farming, overproduction, overfishing, overuse, over extraction of materials from the world, in more indigenous and more historical, prior to our horrible system at the moment, if you don't expect burlesque to be political, you're in the wrong place. um, to the horrible extractive systems that we have at the moment, if you're going to consume meat, then you should be using the whole animal. And the parts that cannot be consumed, turned into clothing, shelter, some other usable tool, um, then they need to be returned to the land to feed the soil, feed the insects, feed the life cycle of the earth. Um, this is when we get a bit hippie and woo. And if you're not into that, then I'm the wrong teacher for you, and that's okay. I probably should have written this as a script instead of just rambling it, but but that's okay. Um, the rest of the tutorial is scripted, so we're fine. Um, and that applies to feathers and leather. I use a lot of leather in projects because, like I say, I believe if you're going to eat meat, I don't have a problem with that. I do it myself, but you should use the whole of the animal. And a lot of vegan alternatives to feathers, which we'll go into a little bit more when I'm showing you how to make cellophane. Why can't I say cellophane? I keep calling it cellophane. Cellophane feathers in a couple of weeks. Um, we'll talk a little bit more about that then. It's plastic, it's petrochemical, it's worse for the environment than using biodegradable feathers that are a byproduct and therefore a waste product of um, the farming and fishing industry. And we're talking fishing as well because we're talking on leather, fish leather. That is a really sustainable resource that's being wasted at the moment, and I have large feelings about that. There are alternatives now that are better for the environment, that aren't PVC, that aren't plastic. Like there's a lot of fruit leather, and we're not talking about the roll-ups that you eat as a slightly unhealthy healthy snack. Um, We're talking like you can get mango leather, cactus leather, pineapple leather, but they're still like quite difficult to get hold of, particularly in the UK, and very expensive. So, if like me, you're working on a budget for a lot of these things, the way that I approach leather use, silk use, because silk's another one that is used a lot in burlesque, and there's a lot of animal cruelty involved in the production process and human cruelty involved as well, and feathers, because that's the topic of conversation here. We I source them secondhand. Um, so places like Vinted, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, any of these places where people are selling stuff off. Um, kind of we're talking the best time of year to try and get a lot of feathers in the same kind of color is after peak wedding season, and peak wedding season tends to be kind of May, June to August, September. So when we're getting in the run up to Halloween, when we're getting into kind of like September, October time, there's a lot of feathers that have been bought new and used decoratively for weddings. And a top tip for sourcing secondhand feathers is if you have like a wedding decoration hire place, like a wedding planner's office near you, they're going to constantly be replacing their lightly soiled, slightly damaged feathers um, at that time of year after they've had a lot of weddings. So if you, as a burlesque school in particular, or as a burlesque performer who's local to them, can go to them and say, hey, can we work out a deal for me getting all of your feather decorations once you're done with them? That's fantastic, because that is creating a circular economy. That is creating a system where they're not going to landfill to, biodegrade back into the earth, which is a beautiful thing, but the dyes also do that, and they're often synthetic. You're getting a use out of them, and you're not creating new feathers. And I know that there's a whole massive debate and conversation we can have about this that goes much deeper, but this is my stance on ethical use of feathers is if they're secondhand, they were going to be mouldering away in somebody's cupboard, or they were going to be chucked in landfill, you're giving them a second life. Yes, it is harder to find the colours that you want, and you have to get creative about your projects. That's how I've ended up with lots of like random blue feathers. I only actually had to buy the navy small ostrich feathers for this to like finish it, because I had like once I had all the feathers together, I was like, actually I need navy ones too. But they were like a fiver, £6 including postage, something like that. Everything else is either I've been buying job lots of feathers and I've needed the other colours for projects and ended up with like random little bits of extra trim added in that I didn't need that colour. Use them for this. Or like these feathers, I bought them for another project, but they arrived kind of damaged. They got a bit damaged in the post, so they weren't suitable for the original project, but perfect for this. A lot of what I do is about reusing things and recycling. Reuse, reduce, recycle, save the planet. But yes, that is my stance on feathers and the ethics of their use in burlesque. For me, again, we will talk a little bit more about allergies to some of the synthetic alternatives to feathers that I have personally, that other people might have. But you might have an allergy to feathers, in which case, don't use them. Use one of the alternatives that work for you. And I'll make a lot of tutorials on how to make feathers out of random stuff as well, because this is my thing now. I'm obsessed. Anyway, that is basically 10 minutes of rambling. We're going to get into the actual tutorial now. And if you want to skip ahead, I'll put a little thing in the description being like, skip ahead to like 10 minutes if you don't want to hear me waffle about feathers. Okay, so we're back to this tutorial. What do you need to make these beautiful cakeboard feather fans. I love how they move. Ah, love it. Um, so you need two cake boards, or if you only want to make one fan, then you only need one cake board. Or you can, if you're on a really tight budget, just use one cake board for two fans and get a bit of felt or craft foam and cut it out and stick it on the back. But I'll do some other tutorials in the future that kind of show you how to do that. We're focusing on using cake board either side. So two cake boards, or these ones are kind of sometimes also called cake cards, but they're not the cardboard ones, although you can make stuff out of them too. Drum boards are also fine. They're kind of the thicker ones that are made out of foam board. Avoid the masonite or MDF ones because they're very heavy and they also need either power tools or like a saw, hacksaw, and a special environment to cut them. Then you want a bunch of feathers or feather trims, which are also sometimes called hackles. You need about 1 meter of ribbon or bias binding or herringbone tape, like this bit along here, just to finish it off. You need 1 bottle of wood glue or similar. Other glues are available. I just like wood glue when we're making stuff out of the cake boards like this are made out of chipboard covered in foil. So you can make stuff out of chipboard too, and I've got other tutorials to show you how to do that. And then optionally, you could also buy like a tub of fabric glue. That is for the ribbon, and you don't need to use it. Also, I think technically you could get away with using Mod Podge fabric glue or the kind of Aleene's tacky glue instead of wood glue. For this project, I just, like I say, if I'm using chipboard, I want it to stay where it's stuck, and wood glue is great for that. And then tools, you need a glue pot, palette, plate, a glue spreader. Again, you can just use cardboard to spread your glue. That is allowed. You need a packet of clothes pegs and or woodworking spring clamps. So, like these bad boys. I bought these specially for this project and I was quite excited to use them for the first time because I've just been using clothes pegs for literally decades and these are exciting. You then need 1 or more silicone craft mats and or a towel or plastic bags or newspaper. Again, put the newspaper like underneath plastic bags or underneath your towel because like newsprint will transfer onto that and it will make your feathers dirty. Or like, you know, a plastic tablecloth, anything you can wipe clean. You need kitchen or craft scissors. You can use your fabric scissors if you want to because we're literally just cutting ribbon for this. I just chose to use my craft scissors because I would have to figure out where I've put my fabric scissors. I'm a mucky pup. Then you need a cutting mat, ideally A3 or larger. I used an A4 mat because I can't find my A3 mat. I think I might have thrown it out because it was mouldy. So I used an A4 one and it wasn't quite big enough for these cake boards are 10-inch cake boards, which is roughly what you're going to get in most supermarkets, most kind of standard ones, but you can get 6-inch and 8-inch ones that are smaller or 12-inch and 14-inch ones which are bigger. If you're using bigger feathers, you might want a bigger board. If you're using smaller feathers, you might want a smaller board, or if that's better for your grip. It just depends on what you can get hold of. An A4 cutting mat was slightly too small for this, and I did end up over cutting it, and I did scratch my table. Luckily, I'm planning to paint and decorate my table, so it'll be hid. We'll hide the sins with decorations, as usual. That's always my advice for everything. Then you need a craft X-Acto Stanley or similar kind of box cutter. I used a Stanley one, like heavy duty guy, because I need that for the grip. I love the shape of it. I've had like other ones that are just not as good because I need specific things for my grip. That I am in no way, shape, or form sponsored by them, despite wearing their colours today. but that's just what works for me. But use what works for you, but you need it to be sharp, and ideally you want um, a fresh blade in it, which you can change out. I didn't, because I didn't have one, and I think that was part of what ended up with me getting a little bit of tears in my foil, which we'll discuss later. Then you want a metal or steel ruler that's specifically, like, they're sometimes also called safety rulers. I'm going to just add safety ruler into the description while we're there, because otherwise I'll forget. Safety ruler, always play it safe. It would help if I spelt it right. Safety ruler. Oh, the T and the E are the wrong way around. That's what's going on there. Yes, so a metal set or steel, like safety ruler, a permanent marker pen, and a damp cloth, kitchen roll, or wipes. Space-wise, same as the other project, you need a table or countertop, and optionally a seat. You can do it seated or standing, whatever works for you. You will also need time. So 2 to 5 days, mostly for glue drying time. But depending on your mobility, dexterity, and access needs, it could be a bit longer, especially if you only have evenings after work to make things. Cutting the cake boards in half might be a 2-day or more job for some folk, and that's okay. I made the bases, like cut the cake boards, stuck all the feathers on in 1 day. Then I took an extra day to paint my ribbon because I didn't have the right colour. But if you use the right colour from the start, you can skip that step. And then 1 day to like stick down the ribbon. Again, might take you less time, might take you more time. That's fine. And then cost-wise, so this project assumes you're going to have to buy most of the materials, but may already have at least some of the tools from past projects. I had to buy the cake boards, which will be about £3 to £5 for two, depending on the size and shape you choose and where you get them from. And then I used about £20 worth of secondhand feathers, which were mostly surplus to other projects. You can use more or less. Obviously, if you use more, it'll be thicker and fluffier. If you use less, it'll be less so. But I kind of showed what that would look like when I was laying out my designs. And then my tools and glues were all free, as I already had them, but if you have to buy them from scratch, it's probably, 25 to £40-ish. Which, this makes these cost anywhere between £25 and £65 to get to this point, and then decorations will be more. I reckon most people can make these for about 30 quid, 35 quid, something like that. They are definitely more expensive than the paper plate project, but, if you're using stuff up, it's basically free. If you have to get things from scratch, that's okay because you can buy them secondhand. A lot of my stuff is secondhand, or you can think of it as an investment in, I'm going to make more things in the future. I'm going to make more of these once I've got the bug. I'm going to make so many fans. You've then got the tools for future projects, and then they're free for those projects. Or you can plan it out to be like, well, I'm going to do these 5 projects, and across these 5, it's only about a £5 for each project, and then it's free. However you want to do the math. Okay, so now we're on to how to make your paper plate fans. Stage 1, prepare your tools and materials from the what you need checklist. This may take a few days if you need to buy things or find them in your craft stash. And then stage 2, set up your space, clear off your work surface to make room to create your fans. Then protect your surfaces with your towel and silicone mat, newspaper, plastic bags, or wipe clean plastic tablecloth. Now, stage 3, we're getting into the actual making now. First, we'll cut the cake boards in half. So flip the cake boards face down so you can see the paper backing. Get your permanent marker pen and ruler out, and just like we did with the paper plate fans, find the middle by measuring across the cake board in both directions and then matching them up with a little cross. Then draw the line across the cake board in the middle and then repeat that for your second cake board. Now put your cutting mat down on your work surface and get out your box cutter or similar tool. Place your first cake board on the cutting mat, then putting the metal ruler with its safety lip closest to your body, put a decent amount of pressure on the ruler with one hand. If this isn't accessible to you, then get an appropriate adult to help. or an inappropriate one. This is burlesque after all. Then cut either away from your body with your cut line vertically on your mat, or if like me, your wrists are a bit wonky and physically can't do that safely, place your cakeboard so that the cut line is horizontal on your mat and then cut across, making sure your body is behind your work surface to avoid accident or injury. Then keep cutting as smoothly as you can. It took me about 10 to 12 passes of the box cutter to cut the cakeboards in half. So take a break because it's hard work. Make yourself a cuppa, then, or do it the next day. Then repeat with your second cakeboard if you're making a set of fans like me. A key tip is don't worry if you end up with slightly uneven sized halves. It's not noticeable once the feathers are there to hide the sins. And as I was causing problems on purpose, if you stopped cutting and moved your cakeboard partway through, like I folded it in half to see how much further I had to go, it will tear the foil a little bit. And also, if you don't have a sharp enough box cutter, it'll tear the foil a little bit. That's fine. You can hide it with ribbon and decorations later. I also paired it so I had one neat, not torn side and one slightly torn side across the two fans, and you can do that too if that happens. It's fine. Like I say, I'm causing problems on purpose so I can troubleshoot them for you. Then stage 4. So next, get your feathers out and decide how you want to place them. Experiment a bit, take photos of the various options, then choose which design you want to go with. Something to bear in mind is whichever feathers you want on the top, most visible layer of your fans, you have to glue them down first. And whichever layer goes last is the back. And you can actually glue them down first onto the top layer of your fans if you want to. I didn't have enough space for that, so I just did it all on one side and then sandwiched the other one on top. And then before we begin gluing, there's some safety tips that some people might need, some people might not. Always make sure you're in a well-ventilated area when using glues and solvents. I opened a window, but you can also work outside on a dry, non-windy day where your feathers aren't going to drift away on the breeze. And I didn't wear any protective gear, but wood glue may stain your clothes, so wear an apron if you're not in your messy painting clothes like I was. And if you have any allergies or skin conditions, wood glue in particular can aggravate those. So wear disposable gloves if needed, and a sanding mask may be needed by folks affected by fumes, like if you have asthma, for example. I use Evo Stick or Gorilla Wood glues because I've tested lots of brands over the years, and I've just found a typo of brands over the years, and those don't cause any reactions for me, so I can get away with not using the extra protections, but everyone is different. And then patch test any new glues or paints before using them, just in case you are. And even if you don't think you will be, like, use the extra protective gear. I just didn't because I'm chaotic. But sometimes it's a case of do as I say and not as I do, which is not great leading by example. but but chaos gremlin. And I will always take safety precautions where they're like definitely necessary. I just get a little bit lazy when it comes to stuff that I know I don't react to, which is not that many things. Okay, back to the tutorial. So take one half of your first cake board and spread a layer of wood glue on it. Glue your feathers down in the pattern you decided on, top layer first. Add a little bit more glue to them once they're in place to help the next layer stick to them. Then for feather trim or hackle, cut them to the right length first, then spread glue along the ribbon on one side, place them on the cake board base, press down gently with your fingers, then spread glue on the exposed ribbon. Then, once you're happy with that pattern, spread glue on the other cake board half, line it up so the straight edges match up, put it on top with the on top of the feathers and then press it down. Then, whilst the glue is still wet, get your damp cloth and wipe off any excess glue. Then get your pegs or spring clamps and clip them carefully around the fans in places that won't damage the feathers. I think I used like 5 along the straight edge, and then 1, 2, and I found 4 places along the top to clip it together. It'll be in the video or photos that are shown with this, but I'm not referring to that at the moment. Then just, yeah, find places that won't damage the feathers to do that, and if they do get a bit caught, just open the peg and gently tease them back into place. Then set them aside on your spare craft mats or similar. Repeat the process with the second fan. This can be on a different day if you prefer. And leave them to dry for 24 hours. Then, stage 5. Next, remove your pegs or clamps. It's ribbon time. I used some random herringbone tape that I painted with fabric paint by following the instructions and ironing it to fix it, because I had both left over from other projects to use up. But you can use any type of bias binding or ribbon you desire. You can also use duct tape if you prefer, and that's what suits the style you're going for. You might need to trim some of the feathers if they've gotten trapped in the bottom edge of your fans, of your cake board at this point. I left mine to show you what it looks like when you don't, and that's just down here. There's a little trapped bit coming out of the bottom. It wasn't too bad. I was pretty good at not doing it this time. If you manage to keep them away from the edge, they'll be more like that. You might also want to, at the end of this, trim the little triangle point off that's there, or you can leave it and hide it with decorations. I'm going to hide it with decorations. Or you might want to glue it more firmly in place. All of those are options. But first, you've got to put the ribbon on them. So you can measure out the length precisely with a ruler, but I just eyeballed it and cut a length for each fan that was just a little longer than the straight edge. Then clip the ends into triangles like I just showed you. Spread the glue along your ribbon on one side. I used Mod Podge fabric glue here because I had some already, but your wood glue from earlier is fine too. Then place the middle of your glued side of your ribbon along the bottom edge, this bit here. So align the triangle points with the corners, middle here, and then gently press it down over either side of your cake board. Fans covering any small tears in the foil. I think on this one you can see a teeny bit of tear. You could use a like wider ribbon to cover that fully, or like I'm going to, hide it with the decorations. And also with the pegs, because we're looking at it now, there's little dents, and with the clamps there's little squares. You don't really see them when it's moving. You can only like, you're aware of them slightly. That we'll hide that with decorations later, but you don't need to. Then use your pegs or spring clamps to hold it in place. Set it aside and leave to dry for 24 hours after you've repeated it on your second fan if you're making 2. And then we're going to come back to stage 6 in part 2 of this video, but to complete here, for anyone who doesn't want to decorate their fans, that's quite happy with them raw and ready like this, using your damp cloth, wipe off any dry excess glue before we move on to decorating. And that's you done for part 1 for this stage. We'll come back and do a separate rhinestoning tutorial later. Yeah, and then just have fun and play with them. This is them done to a point that they're usable. Anything else is purely aesthetic. And we love a bit of glitz and glamour and aesthetic and burlesque, but this is good enough for practice fans for a workshop. Anything else is gravy. So I will be back next time with the second half of this, and with the other Burly Summer Camp 2026 tutorials on how to make a cardboard box fan with cellophane feathers. Ta-ta for now.